I am gonna record this, and then it'll be available for you if you want it later. I'm gonna have my assistant just email it to all of you, and if you don't want it, then just don't do anything about it. Do just follow the link, and you'll be able to download it. And Pablo's our last one. Pablo, where are you calling from?
Hi, I'm calling from Buenos Aires, Argentina.
Buenos Aires. Very nice. All right. All right. Well, welcome everybody. I was just saying that we have a topic today, which is coordination, and since this is really a drummer topic today. This is really more for drummers than anything else. We all have four limbs, and it's also just fine if we have three. I'm actually going to be dealing with three limbs probably for the most part moving forward, but well, we'll see about that. But I can still play with four limbs now. I've been having a lot of shoulder issues lately, so I can still. There's a lot you can do with three limbs. Really, it's just like three out of four. Anyway, point is, I want to just talk about what that is, four-way coordination a little bit, exchange some ideas, answer some questions, that kind of thing. And you're definitely welcome to bring whatever you have on your mind to the table and ask whatever you want as well. But I will just kind of start it off by saying that there's a couple of things that I like to do generally with students regarding four-way coordination, or just coordination in general. And the first thing is actually really quite well, it's not basic, but it's simple. It's simple to to understand. It's pretty much you have a choice of a few groups of rhythms. Usually I'll use quarter notes. So that means one limb, for example, could play quarter notes. Another rhythm would be quarter note triplets. Okay, one more. Quarter note triplets. Maybe another one could play, for example, offbeats. Another limb could play, you could play like whole notes or half note triplets. Another rhythm that I like to use in that is 4/3. So these are all possibilities, and then we can apply them to we could assign, for example, a rhythm to a limb, or we could assign a rhythm to two limbs, which is actually more commonly what I do. But just to get started, so that's hopefully not too overwhelming. Just getting started, let's just take our hands. And let's take one rhythm. Let's take quarter notes. So let's say, okay, let's play quarter note with the left hand. And then with our right hand, we're going to play one of those rhythms. Let's say 4/3. Okay, so 4/3 is the same as dotted eighth notes. So with the right hand, I'm going to play 4/3. I'll do it on the floor tom for now. 1. Okay, for example. So generally, what I would do in a situation like that is I would still try to feel and think in 4-bar or 8-bar or 16-bar phrases. As those of you who know me, I'm sure that you know that you've heard that already. So the next thing that I would do is I would assign. Let's say I would assign that rhythm, that 4/3. Let's assign it to not just the right hand, but also the right hand and right foot. So that means that both the right hand and right foot are going to play this 4/3. Could sound like this: 3, 4. The way that I'll be thinking about it: 3, 4. In 4-bar phrases. So then you can actually start to get creative with it by even just keeping this relationship of right hand, right foot playing the rhythm, and then my left hand is the only one that's playing the quarter notes, right? But what we can start to do is stickings essentially. So even just doing single strokes. The single strokes would just be alternating, right? So I would alternate this rhythm, which is the 4/3, between the right hand and the right foot. And this is also great because you really don't need a drum set to be working on. A lot of people ask me, like, how can I practice if I don't have access to drums? I don't always have access to drums. Maybe you're on the road. Maybe you've escaped somewhere because of COVID. Whatever it is, if you don't have access to drums, this is a really, really good exercise for that. I practice that a lot on, like, for example, on airplanes, um, or any kind of traveling, really. But on an airplane, it's funny because if somebody's sitting in front of you, they think that the world is ending if you're doing these kind of exercises. So I get a lot of really mean looks. Anyway, so that would sound like this if I was going to alternate 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. So from there, what you can start to do is you can start to come up with other stickings. That's that why I'm doing right hand, right foot, right hand, right foot. The first thing that I would do is just reverse that. So now we're starting to, kind of get into some, a little more interesting territory. You can start to do some other kind of stickings, like double strokes, for example. Okay. You can also, for example, use the snare drum and the hi-hat, as the hi-hat being the fourth limb, which right now I'm really just playing it with the snare drum. But I can alternate that in stickings as well. Let's say I wanted to just do single strokes. So it could be 1, 3, 1, 3. Now I'm just going to go back to, for example, the right hand playing the 4/3. And you can do, right hand between the right hand and the floor tom. And so on and so forth. You can go into, double strokes with either limb. I wouldn't really go whole lot farther than that. You could certainly try paradiddles if you want to, but I think the main point of this is more just to really internalize this rhythm of 4/3 between all in a lot of different limbs in a lot of different places, so that if you're called upon to understand and play that rhythm, on the bandstand, you can do it much more easily. So the more ways that you learn it, the better. I would definitely reverse, for example, reverse those rolls and play the quarter notes between, either on the bass drum or on the floor tom, or between the bass drum and the floor tom. You can take, for example, right there, I was doing something with the left hand and left foot with one rhythm, and then with the right hand, right foot, I was doing another rhythm. But you can, of course, do the rhythm with the feet, and then a different rhythm with both hands. Or you can do a rhythm between the right hand and the left foot, and you can kind of cross it like that. So all these are different ways that you can just internalize these basic rhythms in a stronger way. another rhythm that that is another really very simple rhythm is 3/2 or quarter note triplets, and that would work in very much the same way. You would basically pick a limb to play, quarter notes or half notes, and then a one or two limbs to play quarter note triplets, and then you can start to go through different stickings. So is that I can, and I'm happy to demonstrate any of that stuff as well. But I just wanted to check in and see if that's clear, if that's making sense to people generally. Good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
any-
you
yeah.
you mentioned at the start you mentioned half notes would be a subdivision, quarter notes, triplets, and what else did you say?
Could be triplets, could be quarter note triplets, half note triplets, and then the rhythm that we started with, which is 4/3. That rhythm can be called 4/3, but it can also be called dotted eighth notes.
Okay.
And those are the ones that I guess I would start with. There's other rhythmic possibilities, obviously, but I like to pretty much keep it fairly simple when I'm doing these, because there's so much to be gained, even just doing quarter notes against quarter note triplets. I mean, there's so much that you can gain coordination wise. Like, has anybody here checked out the book called Four-Way Coordination by yeah, a few of you, right? It's that
think so.
book, as far as I remember, that book is mostly dealing with this quarter note triplet rhythm, and there's just so many possibilities to it. But it's a really good book, actually. I definitely recommend it. It's hard, and there's not a lot of like payoff as far as I can take this to the gig and use it on my solo or something like that. It's not a book like that, but it will really improve your coordination. That's one thing that it will definitely do. So yeah, definitely check it out. Marv Dahlgren and Elliot Fine, who I actually got to meet both of them and hang out with both of them. I think I think it was Elliot who died a few years ago. Anyway, you probably know that more than I do. Okay, great. So any questions about any of that? Or if you want any kind of other demonstrations with that? Great thing about it too is that you can be really creative with it. You can, I mean, everybody here can come up with, an exercise using that, and none of them are going to be the same. If I wanted to do, something with, for example, with quarter note triplets, right? Maybe I would pick a ostinato. Let's see. Well, what about? I mean, even something like it's super simple. Like, for example, quarter note triplets starting with the right hand, and then between the right hand and the left foot. 1, 2, 2, right? I'm doing again the quarter notes with the left hand, but now I'm going to do the quarter notes with the bass drum. 3, 4. And as soon as I start, alternating the quarter notes, it starts to get harder. Even if I just did something where I just changed the sticking of the quarter note triplets, instead of right, right, left foot, right, left foot, left foot, and I'm just going to alternate it, right, left foot, right, left foot, right, left foot, right? It'll just sound like this. Right? Something so simple, but that can be so challenging. Like, everybody give that a try right now. So you're just playing quarter notes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, right? quarter notes between the bass and snare. Bass drum is on 1, snare drum is on 2, bass drum is on 3, snare drum is on 4. And then you're alternating quarter note triplets between your right hand and left foot. Whenever anybody wants to show me, I'm ready to see or hear. Anyone want to?
I think I got it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do it again.
Sounds a little square when I do it, but.
No. Because the hi-hat is on 2 and 4.
Oh, that's a habit.
Yeah. I mean, I can't see it, but I hear the hi-hat clicking on 2 and 4.
Oh no, I'm doing it with different limbs.
The hi-hat is with the right hand. So you're gonna,
that's what I was doing.
Not at the same time, but you're gonna play quarter note triplets between the. Just try. So what I mean, whenever you're working this kind of stuff out, right? And when you have something challenging like that, if you're challenged by something, if you're struggling with it, all you do is you make it a 3-limb exercise first, right? So in this case, Anthony, what you would do is instead of playing the quarter notes between the bass drum and snare, right? Just play them all in the bass drum.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and then play quarter note triplets, or you can even just take it down to 2 limbs first. Play quarter note triplets just on the ride, and then when you get that, play between the ride and the hi-hat. So for instance, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's where you're going to start. Do that. You can put it between. Okay, so that's your 3-limb exercise right there.
Yeah.
And then what you can do after that is then you add the snare, and you're alternating the quarter notes between the bass and snare.
Mm-hmm.
So simple rhythms, nothing complicated. But when you start dealing with 4 limbs, right, you have all these possibilities, and you realize, look, I might play one rhythm against against another rhythm all the time, but I always do it the same way, where the feet maybe play half notes or quarter notes, and then the hands play one rhythm all the same, which is fine. But as soon as you start to reverse that, you can't do it. So this is the point of this, by the way, is to make you a faster learner when you're put into situations where you're going to need to play something that is a little bit out of your comfort range. So like sometimes, for example, I'd be on doing a rehearsal or it could even be a gig, and somebody would say, okay, I want you to play this, I want you to play this rhythm from Guadeloupe, and it goes like this. This is what they're going to play. The table is going to sound like this, and then they're going to play the cowbell. It's going to sound like this, and so then you're like, okay, I have these 2 parts I got to play. Like, how do I do that? The whole point is that when you are more well versed in coordination, it's going to be pretty easy for you to put one thing against another. It's just going to make you more well-rounded, better, just a better overall player. It's not training you to do anything really specific, or to play anything specific in any specific context or anything like that. It's just making you a faster learner, better able to adapt to different situations that might be you might be asked to play something new that you're not used to.
I've got a question.
Sure.
So would you suggest maybe bridging that sort of strictly limb coordination to a more musical, like say within the jazz genre, by having some of the anchors like the ride cymbal pattern, and then with your other three limbs doing those rhythms, or the hi-hat on 2 and 4 and your other three limbs doing that kind of stuff, like as a bridging?
Absolutely,
or do you think
yeah.
it's better to isolate it and get it totally like percolating in your brain and then move to musical?
I think that for me, I see those as two different things. So I mean, obviously they're both coordination. The thing that you described is kind of like the next thing that I was gonna, talk about. But it's not necessarily a bridge. They're two pretty different things. What you're mentioning is something that's kind of directly related to, um, to a style. It's theoretical because it has to do with what people have played already in the music and how to develop that, right? So in that case, it's in a sense more musical because the application is musical, right? Is more musical. It doesn't necessarily mean that the exercise itself is more musical. It's just that it gives you a chance to apply it in a more musical way, right? So what Matthew's saying is for example. I mean, probably a lot of you are familiar with my systems book. That is very much kind of in line with this tradition, especially it's American tradition, really, with using the book that we call the syncopation. Ted Reed, and what it was the way that it was always described to me by my teacher Carl Mottola was that you would take something called a system, which is essentially an ostinato. That's the system, right? An ostinato, and then on top of this ostinato, the system, you're going to put specific melodies, and the melodies are going to be what helps you kind of it within the coordination and within the context. So that way you'll be able to play back rhythmic ideas that you're hearing in your head or that you're actually hearing on the bandstand, and you'll have the coordination to play those back. So it's a very kind of like musical, the musical point is very obvious. It's very clear. So as far as with the systems book, what I'm usually doing throughout most of the book, and I have 2 more volumes of this that aren't so much dealing with swing, which are dealing with other ostinatos in other styles, right? But we'll talk about just the swing one right now, which is the ostinato that we have on the ride cymbal, and it just is this. Right? So there's your ostinato. Oftentimes, the hi-hat will be on 2 and 4, or it'll be part of this melodic line, if you're going to be using it that way. So, or it can also have its own part, right? So, like, for example, I'll just kind of throw something out, kind of in more of a kind of a random system, right? That you might do. We were doing quarter note triplets, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to play those quarter note triplets between my right foot and my left foot. So that's my system, right? And it'll sound like this. 1, 2, 3. And then on top of that, we're going to play a melody, which I'm going to get from, if I'm using my book, one of the melody pages, or the syncopation melody, or you can just come up with a melody of your own, and that'll be with the left hand on the snare drum. So for example. So what I was doing was I was really just improvising melodic ideas with my left hand. Everything else was set in stone. It was an ostinato, right? It was a system. Then what I was doing with my left hand, in that case, I wasn't reading from a book, right? I was just coming up with a melodic idea. The key thing here is when, because this is what you want to always be able to work towards being able to improvise with this stuff. You never want to be able to have a melody in front of you to read it to be able to play it, right? So all this is really working towards this thing where you're being able to improvise melodies. So I'm improvising in a way that's not just stream of thought. It's really with a compositional element to it. What that means is that there's repetition in everything that I'm playing. If I play a melodic idea, a rhythmic idea, I'm going to repeat it, and I might repeat it 4 times. Maybe I'll play a 2-bar phrase, in which case I'll repeat that, maybe 2 or 4 times. So I'm always repeating it. And there's a couple reasons for that. One reason is just to kind of solidify the 4 and 8-bar phrases. But another reason, which is a very, very important reason, is that, and people don't really talk about this part of coordination, which is making it sound good, like having the phrasing sound good, putting it in the pocket, making it swing. And so if you can make that stuff swing, that's actually going to be the real value in all of this kind of coordination, is making it feel good. Not you can do the most complicated systems in the world, and if it doesn't feel good, it's not really getting you anywhere. If you can't really get it to swing by the end of the day. So the point is, I've written like the systems book, for example. There's a lot of pretty advanced coordination type of things in there. But at the end of the day, the point isn't just to find, difficult things to play between your limbs. The point is to be able to actually to make the phrasing good, to be able to swing, to be able to make it feel good. So, if I'm working with a student, and they're practicing a system that's, let's say, that's pretty hard for them, but they've learned it, I will always opt to do that melody page again, or that system again, rather than just go on because they've learned it. I want it to really feel good. I want it to be able to swing. I want them to be able to play it with ease. One way that I can tell if they can do it with ease is if they can play for instance, what I just played, and then also be able to listen to what I'm saying at the same time. Because sometimes I'll talk to them, right? I'll talk, and many of because a lot of you have had private lessons with me. But you'll know that. So when I talk to you when you're doing this kind of things, if you're able to kind of understand what I'm saying, listen to what I'm saying, as well as keep the thing that you're doing, then you really know it. You really know it well. And if you're not, we got to spend a little bit more time doing it. I always prefer to opt for to be thorough rather than quality rather than quantity. So I'm always really pushing the quantity for this kind of stuff, and not just trying to do get you to do as much different kinds of things as possible. That's really much less important. If you listen to the drummers that you love, right, or at least the drummers that I love, I don't care about the amount of stuff they can play at all. I really care about the quality of the way that they're playing the simple things. That's, to me, is the beauty of what they're doing. So that's how I like to teach, and I like to proceed with that stuff. Anybody have any questions, any thoughts? Cool.
Ari,
go ahead. Yeah.
is it sort of like do you go by sort of like the stick control maxim? Like if you get something happening, at least play it X times before you move on to the next thing, or?
Yeah, I mean, yes and no. I don't. I guess in stick control, right? He says play it 20 times, right? Before he goes on. I don't really subscribe to that way to do it exactly. I think it depends on the person, but I think it's not important how many times you play it as much as where your thought is and where your awareness is at while you're playing it. The point is that when you're playing it, even if I was going to be playing, like, so you're talking about stick control, right? So if even if I was going to take a very simple exercise, which is, you know, R is going to be bass drum, L is going to be snare drum. We've all done this before, right? Swung eighth notes. And if I was going to play that those swung eighth notes, that's just right, left is the sticking. But I guess the point is, if I'm trying to get each bar that I play better than the last one, that's to me the right place to be. You wanna be really focusing on the way that you're playing it, the quality you're playing it with, and how can you get it better than that. If you're not able to get it better than that, then you've probably reached a kind of a plateau. It doesn't mean that it can't get better. What it means is that you're not hearing how it can get better. So
Take a break or something here.
well, yeah, the idea in that case is that you need to improve your ears before you practice the drums, right? It's you need to improve the way that you're hearing it. But like, for example, this is the exercise I'm talking about. So no, so probably some of you are thinking like, yeah, I can play that. That sounds pretty easy. But I want to be clear, like the way that I'm thinking. I want you to describe the way that I'm thinking when I'm practicing that. For me, I was never content with even one bar of that, what I just played. Now, did I play it correctly? Yes, I did. And if you were going to write out and transcribe what I played, it would be actually 100% correct. However, there was a lot of inconsistencies in what I just played. And did you hear them? Maybe not, right? Maybe you didn't. Maybe you might have heard some of them, but I probably heard more of them because I was much more in tune to trying to play the next bar better than the one that I did before. So, for example, if I was playing one bar, the hi-hat was a little early there. The snare drum was a little softer than it was the first note. The bass drum was like totally rushed on that, and that's what I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about those type of details, thinking about consistency in time and even consistency in dynamics, although mostly consistency in time. That's really most of what I'm thinking about. And so even when I was just playing that exercise, there was at least a dozen inconsistent things that I was thinking about, that I played and that I wanted to improve on. So I would be content even practicing an exercise like that, which I can totally play, and I have no problem with the coordination of it. But what can get better is the phrasing.
So I have a question centered around that, and you're talking about your mentality and your mental approach, but how much of that realistically goes into the way that you are approaching the bandstand, or maybe in the midst of the form or the midst of the ensemble? I mean, obviously you're not scouring your approach in that setting, or are you still doing that in the live setting too?
No, I am.
You are.
But I'm not practicing.
You're not.
This is a mentality for practicing, which is, I mean, I'm not gonna be playing something on the bandstand and trying to repeat it until I get it right. That's practicing, right? There's not a musical reason to do that while you're making music, but the point is that I want to be able to play time and dynamics as consistently as possible. That awareness never goes away. I'm always thinking about that when I'm playing music with other people too. But it's not a practicing thing where I'm going to practice one thing for
And you don't find that to get in your way. That doesn't get in your way.
That's like saying music is getting in the way of playing drums. That's the whole point, is for that to get in the way. That's why. I mean, for me, you want to ask yourself like why you're playing music, and that's totally fair. Like you might have an answer that differs a lot from that, but for me, that's one of the most important aspects of what I want to convey when I play. So that's really, really important to me. That's the whole way that I'm able to basically take some, like, if you're listening to me, right, I want to be able to take what you're listening to, and I want you to trust me. I want you to first I want it to feel good, so that you feel like moving, right, to have like a feeling of groove. And I want you to trust me with the consistency, what I'm playing. And the reason that I want you to do that is because then when I play something different, when I play a contrast, it's so much more effective. See what I mean? So I can change what I'm playing drastically or even just a little bit, and it's going to be obvious to you. You're going to feel that. This is all for me. This all boils down to actually basically being able to manipulate people's emotions. Wouldn't it be fun just to be able to, manipulate people's emotions just on a whim? But you don't need a brain chip. You don't need to put in some, but you do need that from their attention to be listening to you. But once they actually listen to you and are focusing on what you're playing, there's a lot of ways that you can do that.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to ideas and how ideas influence your playing, in some senses, my kind of question now, I'm sitting here going, how much is my input given from my practice versus my input given from like your method of really learning the tune better than scouting, like really learning the tune, know the melody, maybe have a sense of the harmony, be able to sing the harmony maybe, and really know the tune. And then you're also coming at it from an angle of saying, but there's this method of almost magic in mathematics and in scientific reasoning or something that also is a big part of your approach that you also use to develop your band. I mean, like you're talking about being a leader too, and trust me. Just have a faith. Let's have a faith and let's build on the mathematics almost in some sense. Right?
It's I mean, it's kind of, I mean, I'm not sure what you're meaning by mathematics, but I think, yeah, there's definitely thought behind and understanding, for me of what I'm playing and what I'm hearing, which definitely can boil down to mathematics. Everything does, really, right?
Yeah.
At the end of the day.
Yeah.
Any kind of like anything that's intellectual, but this is definitely an intellectual approach to understanding what you're playing or what you could be playing and what other people are playing. And if you can mix the emotional and the intellectual together and you can understand both, that actually is going to give you a lot more power, just in general. So that I am a strong believer in that. Yeah.
It's beautiful. Thanks.
Yeah. Anybody else have any thoughts or any questions about anything so far?
Yeah, this idea of not necessarily training your ears, but expanding what you understand you're listening to or what to focus on.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's an important thing. If you wouldn't mind talking a little bit more about that, like when you're listening to yourself. And like, is it swinging? Is it feeling good? Like, what am I listening to? How that can be applied to in when you're on a gig and you're listening to the other musicians, like hearing their push and pull of time or everything, and be able to respond to that because you know what to listen for, rather than like, is the bass player, like laying on the quarter notes, or is it something more subtle that you can hear and understand what he's doing, and then engage him with that and push and pull, and then you make that connection, like, oh yeah, we're doing this together as a group. That's amazing.
Yeah, I mean that really boils down to just the whole method that I use called rhythm training, which most of you know already. I mean, and that's the way that I recommend to develop it is through that method. And so the more that you and I look, I work with that with the most advanced students. This isn't something that it's like, oh yeah, you learn how to tap out triplets on your lap and sing a simple melody and it ends there. All my most advanced students and really are working on rhythm training stuff. It's maybe not the same thing as everybody, but that it goes very, very far is my point. So it'll go to a point to what you're talking about, Matthew, when you're you're on the bandstand, and do you understand what you're doing? Do you understand what other people are doing? Do you understand the music that's being played? Do you understand the melody? And if you understand all those things, you will have an idea how to respond, the same way that you have an idea how to respond in conversation. You don't have to think about the words you're saying. You just talk. You just talk about the ideas that you're having. You just have an idea, and you're able to speak automatically. The words come out. You don't have to think about how they're spelled. You don't even have to think about grammar, right? None of that is even approaching your thought, your awareness at all, because it's automatic, right? So that's what you want to get to in music. And to me, that the method that I have with rhythm training is supposed to prepare you for that. But it takes some time, and that's the whole thing. That's exactly what it's about. And we'll have another one of these, sessions about. We did one, I don't know, a month or two ago about with that subject, rhythm training. And we'll do another one at some point. But I would definitely, recommend for everybody just diving into that, because to me, that's like the key. And most of you have it already. I mean, it's a video from My Music Master. There's 3 videos actually, and I think most or not, if not all of you, already have that. But that's, to me, is the way to progress. That and also coordination. But that's the what is the interesting way to really develop a unique thing too, as well, at a very high level, are using rhythmic ideas and rhythm training, and also through coordination, both of those two things. So hopefully that helps, but I don't want to go into that like 100%, but I would just say, just check that out, because that's going to be your key into understanding the language of what you want to hear. It's just going to teach you the language, and once you learn the language, then you have to work on being able to hear it in time, as fast as other people are playing it, because just because you learn to play something on the drums, right, and then you see a professional drummer playing it, and they're playing it, let's say 3 times faster than you were, and maybe you won't even recognize it because it's so much faster. You won't even be able to hear it and understand it. And then somebody says, "Oh yeah, it's that thing you were practicing." You're like, "Oh yeah, I didn't even realize it because it was played so fast." But tempo it's the same as language. Again, you can learn a language perfectly, but if you never speak it, you're never going to be able to understand it fast enough. So what was I going to do? There was another type of a coordination thing that I think I was going to. Oh, right. So if you're dealing with like another type of a style of music, right? Let's say you wanted to play Afro-Cuban, for example. Pretty much the only thing that would change was it would be just this general kind of ride pattern. Maybe you'd want to. I'm just playing that kind of Afro-Cuban bell pattern with the right hand, and I'm just playing quarter notes on my hi-hat. But this is the same way that you can develop that coordination, through that type of an ostinato. And then that leaves the left hand and the right foot to either play a part, something that's part of the ostinato, or something that's improvised, or like a melodic line. So let's say I play. Right, which is bass. It's the same thing, but my bass drum is now playing half note triplets, right? So I'm playing groupings of 4 triplets. And then my left hand is going to be the one that improvises. and so on. So you can, you start to either read the melodic line with the left hand or improvise with the left hand, right? But this feeling of, this Afro-Cuban bell here, and then the hi-hat on all four stays. And then, so the kind of the interesting thing that you can do with that, and with all these systems, is just change one thing instead of trying to do a completely different system. So what if instead of I'm improvising with the snare, then I'll just improvise with the bass drum, and then the snare will play that same pattern that the bass drum was playing. So. Okay, so then the bass drum would improvise. It's the same kind of idea. You could even do it where the hi-hat plays that rhythm. So the point is that I'm really taking one essentially style or bell pattern, and then another rhythm, which is in this case that was the half note triplet, and then I'm moving it around to be able to kind of manipulate it in a bunch of different ways. I could do a few more, but the idea is that you want to try to be able to do that in a few different ways, so that you really have some musical options when you're going to be drawn on to play something like that at some point, and you want to be able to have different options to be able to develop your ideas. And there's nothing better to develop an idea than options like that. Oh, all of a sudden the melody's being played here, now the melody's being played here, or this same rhythm is being played on the small tom, now it's being played on the snare, now it's being played on the bass drum. That's musical development. That's how you can use musical development, melodic development. And so that's why you want to kind of go as far as you can with these kind of ostinatos. That's the way that that's the book system. That's really how it's laid out. It really takes one idea as a chapter, one rhythm. I'll take one rhythm, and then I'll bounce that rhythm around either between two limbs or just on one limb. But I'll move it around and find a lot of different possibilities to be able to play melodies with that. Does that make sense?
So, in a lot of sense, like your sort of overarching thing is ear training, or your ability to hear, in some sense too. I mean, if you want to outline it or something, rhythmic ear training. Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
Yep, ear training, definitely that category. Yeah.
So one's ability to open their ears might be what we're trying to develop.
Always, man. I mean, the most important thing about being a musician is listening. So yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it is. That's to me that's something that if it's not, then I think you're going to be just much less of a musician. Listening is the key. It's always the most important thing. The better listener you are, the better musician you are.
Yeah.
Anybody want to share some coordination ideas of your own with everybody?
I've been mixing some of the rhythm training stuff into a basic way of doing the coordination. I was doing the triplets grouped in fives with the groupings of like 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 3. Put that in my bass drum, and then just was filling in the rest of the triplets on my snare and working on all the permutations of that.
And what plays the melody?
I didn't incorporate that yet. I've been just getting used to getting that ostinato. It would have to be my left foot that would do the melody, because I was doing the swing rhythm pattern and then the fives in my foot and hand. Yeah,
that's cool. Yeah. So and so what you're talking about, I mean, and this is definitely a much more advanced type of system, which is a grouping of 5 triplets, right? So I'll do it. I'll play it, for example, between the hi-hat and the snare, right? Right, and of course you're keeping 4-bar phrases, so 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? And so in this case, since I'm playing the ostinato and this grouping between my snare and my hi-hat, right, that only really frees up my bass drum to play the melody or to improvise, right? So then it would sound something like this once I got around to improvising. Understand how that works, or you could take a tune too. For example, like now is the time. Everybody know that? Ba-da, 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 right?
I've definitely enjoyed trying to take the melodies of tunes instead of just trying to use the syncopation book or other melody books to do the coordination stuff with, because there's a little bit more of a connection to it to me that I can actually hear the melody compared to just hearing it as static rhythms.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, but at the same time, all those melody pages in Ted Reed syncopation and also in my book are based off of me hearing melodies too.
Oh, exactly.
And,
yeah.
And so when you practice, the good point about using the books like that is that you can take a 1-bar phrase and just repeat it. With a melody like Now Is the Time, there's a lot of repetition in the melody, but you're not really just taking 1-bar phrase and repeating it. So let's just say I wanted to just to play like ba ba da ba da ba ba da. When you're just starting to learn the coordination, right? And you've just really just started with the 3 limb. Want to practice that 1 bar for a while just to really get that solid. So that's why I think that sometimes taking those 1-bar phrases or even 2-bar phrases are also really valuable besides the melodies of songs for obvious reasons too. Yeah,
absolutely.
There's also like really just simple coordination stuff. Like this is kind of one thing that I was just single strokes between the between the floor tom and the bass drum, for example, and then just seeing what you can improvise around that. I'm improvising with 2 limbs, with the hi-hat and with the snare. But of course, you could just start improvising with one of those at first. But nothing. There's nothing really complex about it. It only gets complex because it starts to kind of fold you in different directions because of the coordination, right? But that's just a general single strokes. You can do it the same. between the snare and the bass drum, and then just improvise with the right hand and the left foot. These are all just little things meant to improve your coordination, and also just keeping it open for you to improvise with. But of course, you'll want to start when you start something like that new. You have to start really simply. One of the things that I really recommend too in the Sisters book, there's a book, there's a part that's just called partials, which is just the most simple rhythms that you can find. It's just starts with just quarter notes, off beats, and all the eighth notes. So those are the kind of components of kind of a one bar that you want to make sure that you can nail down. And then it'll proceed with rhythms like just the end of, like, for example, half notes, or the end of one and the end of three. The basic rhythmic components, but those are the ones that are going to be the most important at first, so that you're not kind of jumping into this new coordination thing, thinking that you have to play things much more complicated than you're ready to.
I have one that I got from a teacher in Cuba that you've kind of alluded to, I think, actually. So I don't know if this is something that people haven't heard before, but it would be using stick control. And then in stick control, you're creating an ostinato pattern in your right hand. And then your right limb is your foot on the 1 through 24. Your right limb is your foot, and your left limb is your hand. And you just go through those sticking patterns. But what you do is you go through the subdivisions. So you could start with half note triplets and then go to eighth notes or quarter notes, and then quarter note triplets, and then eighth notes, and then eighth note triplets. And you could go up to 8. And I've crafted it in the Indian system, which is the T-high, and you can do that up to 8ths. And then the 8 would be, let's see, da 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 da. Da 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 1, which is that
T-high, yeah.
the T-high, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if you were talking about that yet, but
well,
I thought you mentioned something like that.
Oh yeah, there's very much like an unlimited amount of coordination stuff that you can do. But I think that as long as you start with kind of the most simple ideas, then that's going to kind of give you the most possibility for creativity, and to develop your own. So for sure that there's a lot that you'd be able to do with that, if you keep working on it and keep developing it, keep practicing it. Anybody else want to chime in with any questions or comments or anything that you wanted to get out of this that we didn't cover?
Yeah, I got a question, Ari.
Yeah.
So, obviously working on some of these ideas with the click, starting with quarter notes and then maybe doing backbeats and upbeats or, whatever. Do you have any sort of creative ways to use a metronome against some of these ideas so that you're, working on your ear to hear like some kind of, dotted ostinato with the click?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Something other than just like the basic beginning points, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, and this kind of like is going towards what I was talking about before about phrasing and about really just kind of buckling down and just trying to get the phrasing right. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So for example, that's probably not very loud for everybody, but I will make it loud in a second here. So one thing that I do actually pretty often with students, and this has to be at a point where they've already kind of mastered the coordinate or close to mastered the coordination of what they're doing, but they are having trouble with phrasing or having trouble with timing in that type of way, is to hear the metronome on different parts of the beat, just like what you were saying, right? But I would usually start with just the third note of the triplet. On all beats, all 4 beats. So for example, here's let's do 78, and can everybody hear that? Is that loud enough? Yeah. Okay. Well, tell me if you can hear when I start playing along to that. But so for example, we'll take a coordination exercise like. Well, let's just do the one that I was just doing, right? Right. So that's Anthony's idea about the groupings of five, right? So then when I bring in the bass drum, I'm going to start to hear this as being the third note of the triplet. So one triplet, two triplet, three triplet, four triplet, one triplet, two triplet, three triplet, four triplet. That metronome is, it's staying on the third note of the triplet like that. Sometimes kind of what the general, what generally happens is that, when you start doing that exercise, you start playing ahead of the beat. And so, you really want to think about centering that, targeting the center of the beat. And hearing the metronome on the third note of the triplet is a really great way to start that kind of thinking. So we'll probably do one of these sessions on just the metronome and how to practice with the metronome, and different ways to practice with the metronome, and how to hear it in different parts of the beat too. But that'll be a kind of a start to that. But that's definitely a place that I would start. Yeah. But again, you want to have the basic coordination down before you start doing that, because you can't do everything at the same time, right? Until the basic coordination is pretty automatic, at least like 80%, let's say, putting the metronome on a place like that, like you're not going to be able to really focus on it, and the metronome really needs to have most of your focus there. Yeah. So, hopefully that was helpful. And maybe one last question before we call it. Anybody, Zach, you got anything? You can just put your hand up. Good.
No, I didn't really. I mean, some things I was thinking about were just like if you play the melody within like the eighth note triplet, keep everything going in the quarter note, but then start playing syncopation or one of your systems in eighth note or quarter note or even half note triplets, or that can get pretty out there. And then I guess I was also just thinking of like going across the bar lines with some of the ostinatos, which I think you were getting into with some of the, even a 3-2 clave or 2-3 claves, for a
Right.
2-bar, but also longer than that,
And definitely
with some of the weird subdivisions.
Yeah, and definitely that last thing that I was just doing goes pretty far over the bar line. Any kind of groupings, that go over the bar line, sure. That's all really, really definitely interesting stuff. Anytime you're going over the bar line, you're adding, some other more advanced elements, definitely to the stuff.
Do you know of good resources for like some of the various Indian concepts, like when they're getting into we've got 64 spaces, we're going to do 7 7 7 8 6 5 4 3 2. I don't know the names of those, but you know what I'm talking about?
Yes. What I would say is that, from my understanding, from what everybody's told me, is that that stuff is not really supposed to be taught through books or resources. It's really supposed to be taught through a teacher. And so there's a reason why there's not a lot of stuff available that explains that stuff. It's because that's kind of the belief, is that, you're supposed to kind of get with the teacher and have a, kind of a master that, that takes you through all this stuff. And so they really save their concepts and their music for that. With that said, there's definitely other ways that you can understand rhythmically, those rhythmic concepts for sure. But they definitely prefer it to be taught not only because of the rhythms, but also the forms of the songs and just the way that the music works, and also the part of to do with the culture as well, because it's everything's kind of taught together. But I'm not gonna tell you, I mean, I haven't studied it, so I'm not gonna really go into any more detail about it. But I would say that I've from what I understand, that you're kind of supposed to hook up with somebody in person.
I
Or
had
on
a,
Zoom.
I had a little experience with Zakir Hussain, and my understanding is that you think of it all in four. So 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. I'm obviously nowhere near accurate. I mean, because
It sounded perfect to me. I thought that was great.
I don't know what subdivision was that. I don't
I
even
was
know.
hearing 7/4. I don't know about you
Yeah.
guys.
So you're doing that, and but the nature of it is that you're so in tune with 7 that you could do 7 in any grouping. Like 1,
Yeah,
2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you double that or you triple that. So
yeah.
but I also got that
I
from
was hoping maybe there was like a cheat
Eric
sheet,
Harland.
that was like,
For
because
that,
I know like 3G at UNT did a bunch of this where it was usually 8, like the fingers and the hand turn on the second one, and then it was like takadimi, takadimi, takita, takadimi, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But there were some specific forms that were kind of like classical forms, like T-high, and I'm not sure if those are summarized in writing anywhere.
I mean, a lot like some, like Indian music is very classical form is a 16-beat form or 32-beat form, just like we have too. But it's not the only form, obviously, but it is a classic. That is a classic form too. Have you checked out much stuff on? I mean, have you listened to much Indian music, like Carnatic music, for example? Yeah, you actually hit me
fair
to
amount.
You actually, I think the first time I heard it was through you, to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
But listening to it and then just trying to figure out what the forms are from just listening to it, like it's actually not impossible. It's easier than you might think. I mean, I guess it would depend on the recording and everything, but it's definitely doable, especially if you hear, because it's similar than jazz, because it's like the melody is stated, at the beginning, and it doesn't get into the really complex stuff, and it develops and develops and develops. But it's still the same form. They might play it for hours, the same form, the same
Yeah.
I'm gonna finish with a little story talking about that, which is that I was playing, I was doing a festival in Germany this is many years ago. This has probably got to be 20 years ago, with Kenny Werner and Johannes Weidenmuller, the trio that we've had for a really long time. And so we were kind of paired or grouped to perform with an Indian group where there was sitar and tabla and vocals and I mean it was I think there were five of them, but the idea of the festival, and they do this in especially Germany, because the people that run the festival, it's like they want to program the music, but they also want to be creatively involved so much that they actually program these things due to what their whims are. So what this person was like, I want to put the Kenny Werner trio, with this, this Indian group, and then just see what happens. And of course, we were all being paid to do the week, right? So we came in the week, we rehearsed every day with this group, and so we would rehearse, like, for example, every day from like, I don't know, like 10 to 2, all right. And then from Monday through Friday, we rehearsed. We got together a concert, a set, and we're able to play a concert. And then on Saturday, we perform the concert, right? pretty straightforward, and I loved it. I had a great time. It was great performing. They were excellent musicians. The tabla player was really cool, and at that point I hadn't really heard almost no Indian music at all. So I was really like wet behind the ears. And so it was kind of cool. I was talking to, and I got to be a little bit friendly with him, and so part of the concert we developed a thing where we would play together, a duo section that was essentially what they would call a drum solo, but it was essentially the two of us playing a T high or it was a little bit longer idea than that, and then improvising and then coming out of it by playing another kind of long rhythmic idea. And I didn't create this idea. He completely did, right? So he's like, yeah, this is what we're going to play. And I was like, okay, I got to learn it, right? So I recorded it and I learned it, and I came to the rehearsal and I maybe, the next time, and I had it mostly, and then the next day after that I really had it, and I was very proud of myself, and I nailed it, and I can play it, and I was like, okay, cool, like I got it, I can improvise. It sounded really cool. We were all really in sync, and we came out of it, and everything was together, and we're ready for the concert. And so then the concert came Saturday night, and it's going really well, and in the middle of the point where we're supposed to do this drum solo, and we start playing it, and immediately he starts, like, I'm just off. I get off. I'm totally lost. I have no idea what he's doing, and I'm trying to hold it together, and I'm just like, can't really. It was a complete fold, as they say. So at the end of the concert, and it wasn't like the last song of the concert, but at the end of the concert, I said, hey, like, what happened during that? I'm sorry, like, I didn't realize. Were you playing something different, or with the way we rehearsed it, something was different, I thought, or I wasn't sure. He said, oh, well, I mean, it's nighttime now. And I was like, what do you mean? He said, well, we play a completely different thing for nighttime than we do for the daytime. We've just been rehearsing the daytime one because we've been playing in the daytime. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Lesson learned.
Yeah, I mean, okay.
I never heard that.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, that's a funny story. I'll always remember that because it was such a complete fold, and I practiced it so hard, Anyway, with that said, guys, thanks very much for tuning in today. Hope it was good. Hope to definitely, be in touch with all of you moving forward. And, thanks for all you Patreon members, obviously, keep it going, and really appreciate that. So have a great day. Happy practicing.
Thanks, Ari.
Thanks a lot.
Great.
Bye. See you next time.
Thanks, Ari.
All right. Be well.
Thanks, Ari.
You too.
Take care.
Thanks.
Bye.
Take
Thanks,
care.
Ari.
Bye.
Thank you, Ari.
I'll send
Thank you.
I'll send you all videos of the session.
Thank you.
Ciao.
Thank you.